Hello, my loves, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Unpacked Story. I'm your host, Katrina Friedman. I'm really glad you're here, whether you're listening on your commute, out for a walk, lying awake at night thinking about life, or just trying to get through another busy day. Thank you, and thank you so much for being here. Today's episode is called When a Time Becomes More Valuable Than Money. And honestly, this is the conversation I've been having with myself and lately. Not because I've suddenly stopped caring about money. Not because bills have disappeared. Not because life has somehow become free. No. But because the older I get, the more the definition of success seems to be changing. And I'm wondering if some of you feel the same. I remember being young and believing that more was the better. More money, more opportunities, more responsibility, more status, more recognition, more achievement. It felt like life was one giant ladder, and success meant climbing higher than what you were yesterday. The goal was simple: keep moving, keep earning, keep growing, keep chasing. And for a long time, I genuinely believed that when I reached that next level, I'd finally feel settled. But something funny, you reach the next level, right? And then another one up here, and then another one up here, and another. Finish line feels like it keeps moving. It keeps moving all the time. The destination rather keeps changing. And before you know it, years have passed. I think one of the most dangerous things about ambition is that it rarely announces itself as a problem. Ambition feels productive. Ambition feels responsible. It feels admirable. People congratulate ambition. People reward ambition. Nobody would pull you aside and say, hey, just be careful. You might accidentally spend your life pursuing things that don't really matter to you. Nobody says that. Instead, they cheer you up. Work harder, push harder, aim higher. And before you realize it, your life becomes one long sprint toward a finish line you never stop to question. I don't know exactly when it happened for me. Maybe it happened gradually. Maybe it happened without me noticing. But somewhere along the way, I stopped asking, how much more can I make? And I started asking myself, how much life am I willing to trade for it? That's a very different question. Because suddenly you're no longer measuring success in money. You're measuring it in more. A few years ago, if somebody had offered me more money, I probably wouldn't have thought twice. But now I ask different question. I always ask different question. What's the cost? What is it going to take? More evenings? More weekends maybe? More stress? More missed moments? More phone calls during family dinners? More time to think about work when I'm supposed to be present? Because at the end of the day, opportunity comes with a price tag. And sometimes that price is not just financial. Sometimes it's personal. The truth is, time has started feeling different for me. When you're younger, time feels endless. You spend it freely because you start assuming, or you at that point assume there's plenty more coming, there's plenty more time coming. You think in decades. You think in someday I'll slow down, someday I'll travel, someday I'll spend more time with family, someday I'll enjoy life, someday. But one day you start to realize that someday is not a date on a calendar. It's not. It's just a word. And that's a very strange feeling, to suddenly become aware of how quickly everything moves. 1 minute, rather, you are planning for the future. The next, you are wondering where the last 10 years went. You start noticing birthdays arrive faster. Christmas comes around quicker, and children grow up. Parents get older. Friends move away. Life keeps moving, whether you like it or not, whether you are paying attention or not, just keeps moving. And that's when something shifts, because suddenly time doesn't feel unlimited anymore. It doesn't. It feels valuable, because we are surrounded by a culture that constantly tells us to want more everything. But what if the answer isn't more? What if the answer is enough? I think enough is a beautiful word, but we live in a world, enough doesn't solve product. Enough doesn't drive endless consumption. Enough doesn't create comparison. Enough says, good, I have what I need. I'm grateful for what I already have. And that is the most powerful thing. Because the moment you discover enough, you become much harder to manipulate. Something I've noticed is that the older people get, the less they talk about money and the more they talk about time. Think about it. When people reflect on their lives, right, they rarely say, I wish I spent more evenings answering emails. They rarely say, I wish I'd taken more work calls. What people miss are moments, time, experiences, conversation, connection. Sometimes the life we are trying to build is actually the life we are postponing. We are working hard today for a future that requires us to sacrifice the present. And while that makes sense, sometimes we have to be careful, because if you're always living for a later, we will never arrive. I think one of the hardest traps in adulthood is believing your worth is tied to your productivity, that you're valuable because of what you do, because of what you earn, because of what you achieve. And if you stop producing for a moment, you start feeling guilty. Somewhere along the way, many of us learned that slowing down equals falling behind. But what if slowing down, right, is actually wisdom? What if slowing down means you're finally paying attention? What if slowing down is how you notice the life you've been rushing through? The older I get, the more I'm convinced that present is becoming a rare skill. Everyone is somewhere else, thinking about tomorrow, checking their phone, planning the next thing, living 10 minutes ahead of themselves. But some of the best moments in life happen when you're fully where you are. Not somewhere, not somewhere else. Here, now, at the dinner table, on the walk, in the conversation, in the moment. I think that's what family becomes more important with age. Not because family suddenly changes, because you begin to understand how precious people are. You realize nobody stays forever. The opportunities for ordinary moments aren't limited anymore. And suddenly, an evening together feels more valuable than things once changed. Maybe that's maturity. Realizing that success is not about how much you've accumulated. It's about how much you experienced, how deeply you actually connected, how often you've been present, and how well you've learned. I used to think that freedom meant financial freedom. I remember I used to think that quite a lot. I thought that was the truth about freedom. And I didn't, and don't get me wrong, financial security matters a lot. But now I think freedom is something slightly different. Freedom is being in control of your attention. Freedom is having choices. Freedom is being able to say no. Freedom is protecting your time. Freedom is not feeling owned by your calendar. And perhaps the greatest irony is this: many of us sacrifice freedom in order to create freedom. We work ourselves into exhaustions, trying to build a life we'll eventually have time to enjoy. Challenge is figuring out where the line is. We need to figure out where the line is. Because if we are not careful, the future steals the present. The older I get, the more impressed I am by people who have balance, not perfection, balance. People who work hard but know when to stop. You need to balance the two. You need to work hard and know when to stop. People who care about success but don't worship it. People who make time for family. People who are not trying to prove something every minute of every day. Those people inspire me far more than they would have been 10 years ago. They inspire me a lot. And there was a time when I'd have looked at somebody's earning less money and assumed they were less successful. Now I'm not so sure anymore. What if they are home every evening? What if they are less stressed? What if they are healthier? What if they are happier? What if they actually enjoy their life? Then who's winning then? That's the question I think more of us should ask. Not who earns the most, but who enjoys their life the most. Maybe that's what this episode is really about. Permission. Permission to redefine success. Permission to stop climbing the ladders that lean against the wrong wall. Permission to admit your priorities have changed. Permission to want a slower life, a quieter life, a more present life, a more meaningful life. Because changing your definition of success isn't fail, it grows. The things that matters at 25 don't have to matter at 45 or whatever the age as you get old. goals that drove you 10 years ago don't have to drive you forever. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to decide that time matters than anything else, than money. It matters so much. And maybe that's where I've landed. Not that money doesn't matter. No, it does. But beyond a certain point, what I'm really chasing isn't more money. No, it's more life, more mornings that don't feel rushed, more conversation that are not interrupted, more memories with the people I love. That's what I'm chasing. Peace, more presence, more moments that actually feel like living. Because at the end of the day, money is renewable. You can earn more, you can make more, you can recover financially, but time only moves in one direction. Every day I spend is gone. Every year passes one. Every moment is temporary. And that's exactly what makes it valuable. So if you're listening to this today and you've been feeling the same shift, if you've started valuing time differently, if you've perhaps begun questioning whether more is actually better, right? If you're discovering that family, peace, health, and presence matter more than they used to, you are not losing your ambition. You're gaining perspective. And there's a difference. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me in this episode of Unpacked Stories. I hope it gave you a chance to pause and think about what success means to you. Not 10 years ago, not according to social media, not according to somebody else's expectation, but just you. Because maybe the richest life isn't the one with the most TV. It's the one with the most moments that matter. Until next time, thank you.